My dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "We used your savings on someone who will make better use of it." No hesitation, no shame, just that. The dining room seemed to shrink. I heard the clink of my brother's fork against his plate, my mom's awkward little cough, the low buzz of the light above us. For a second, I couldn't tell if the ringing in my ears was my heartbeat or the silence. I swallowed and forced my voice to work. "Better than me?" That was when my grandfather slowly pushed his chair back. His face, usually soft with age and half smiles, turned into something carved from stone, the kind of expression that says something is about to crack. "Say who," he said quietly. "Say who, right now." But what happened at that table was only the explosion. The fuse had been burning for years. My name is Claire. For most of my life, I believed the easiest way to survive in my family was to stay small and quiet. I grew up in a house where raised voices meant disaster and questions were treated like complaints. So I trained myself to be easy, uncomplicated, low maintenance. The kid who didn't ask for rides, didn't ask for help, didn't ask for much of anything. I packed my own lunches as soon as I could reach the counter. I walked myself to school. When money was tight, I offered to skip field trips without being asked. There was always this unspoken rule: if something had to give, it would be me. Because my younger brother, Ethan, was the one with potential. People said it constantly. Teachers, relatives, neighbors. Ethan was gifted, talented, going places. It was like some halo that hovered over him, and the rest of us were supposed to tilt our lives so the light fell just right. My parents leaned into it completely. Praise, attention, time, money, it all pooled around him. By the time we were teenagers, it wasn't just favoritism, it was a system. Ethan's needs were investments. Mine were, "You're strong, you'll manage." Brunette birthdays made the difference obvious. Ethan got bikes, gaming systems, brand new sneakers from the mall. I got things like a plain watch with, "You're not flashy anyway, you like simple things," and a card that sounded more like a performance review than a celebration. I smiled, because that's what I was trained to do. School events were the same. If I got an award, a writing contest, perfect attendance, a science fair ribbon, my mom would clap politely. My dad would lean over and say, "Just wait until Ethan starts winning these. That's when it'll really count." I believed that he got more because everyone said he would become more. When I was 16, I got my first part-time job, a filing position at a tiny office. Later, I added a weekend shift at a cafe. I didn't spend much. I saved almost everything. Watching those numbers grow was the first time I felt like I had something that was mine. My dad told me he'd help set up a savings account for your future. We went to the bank together. He handled most of the talking. I trusted him. That's what you do with parents, right? You trust they'll protect what you earn. Full-time, as an administrative assistant in the city, the savings account was supposed to be my safety net. Nothing dramatic, just security. Emergency rent. A used car someday. Proof that I'd quietly, steadily built a life I could stand on. I was building one. I rented a small apartment with thin walls and a view of a half-empty parking lot. I furnished it with secondhand chairs and mismatched plates. I had one stubborn plant on the windowsill that I kept forgetting to water. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I knew the bus schedule by heart, the neighbor who practiced trumpet badly, the bakery that discounted bread after 6. Every other weekend, I drove back to my parents' house. I told myself it was out of obligation, but really, it was for my grandfather Henry. He lived a couple hours away, but he visited often and always tried to time his trips with mine. He never made big speeches about fairness, but his questions had an edge. "You doing all right, kid?" he'd ask. "They treating you right?" I always answered, "Yeah, I'm fine." I didn't realize then that he already suspected something was off. The first real warning sign came on a gray Wednesday evening. I got home from work, kicked off my shoes, reheated leftover pasta, and opened my laptop to check my account like I always did at the end of the month. The number on the screen punched the air out of my lungs. I blinked, refreshed, closed the tab, reopened it. The Wi-Fi was fine. The balance wasn't. It wasn't just low, it was almost gone. I scrolled down, my fingers numb. There was a line of transactions I didn't recognize. Transfers, payments, withdrawals. Not one or two, a pattern. Spread out over months, just subtle enough that if someone didn't look closely, it might slip by. Someone had assumed I wouldn't look closely. For a few long seconds, I just sat there, my fork suspended halfway to my mouth. That familiar instinct stirred. Don't overreact, don't assume, don't be difficult. But the numbers didn't care about my old habits. They were what they were. The next day, I drove to my parents' house. Mainland Mom was in the kitchen chopping vegetables, humming like everything in the world was normal. Ethan was sprawled on the couch, a sleek, expensive-looking laptop open on his knees. It was newer and nicer than anything I'd ever owned. "New laptop?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He didn't look up. "Yeah, Dad said I needed something tightened." "Courses?" "Some extra programs, gear, supplies. They said it's, an investment." He shrugged. "You get it." I did, too well. Mom slid carrots into a pot. "Claire, be encouraging. This is a crucial time for him." She smiled at me. "You remember what you were like at his age?" "I was working after school," I said. She waved her hand like batting away a fly. "That was your choice, and you turned out fine, didn't you?" Time the words that hurt as much as the expectation behind them that I would swallow this too, like everything else. That evening, after Ethan disappeared into his room and Mom went upstairs, my dad came into the kitchen. He opened a drawer, rummaged around for something, then closed it with a careless thud. I watched him. "Dad," I said, "can we talk about my savings account?" He didn't even flinch. "What about it?" "There's money missing," I said. "A lot." He didn't avoid my eyes. He just said, like discussing the weather, "We used it." My throat went dry. "Used it for what?" "For your brother," he replied. "He needs chances, opportunities, things you didn't." I stared at him. "I didn't need opportunities?" "You're already working," he said. "You're stable, you're fine. Ethan's future needs more support." Bilingual said it with this calm, rational tone, as if it were the fairest thing in the world, as if my reliability made me less worthy of what I'd earned. Unpredict even remember what came out of my mouth after that. Maybe nothing. Silence had always been my safest armor. Words kept echoing in my head. "We used it. You're fine. He needs more." When everyone was asleep, I slipped back into the kitchen and opened the same drawer he had. Under old takeout menus and loose pens, I found a folder with my name on the tab. Inside were forms, documents to open a small loan. In my name, without my knowledge. Wasn't just spending what I already had, he was preparing to sink me into debt for someone else's dreams. My hands shook, but not from fear. Something sharper had replaced it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. I barely slept. I lay awake in my apartment later, listening to the heater click, scrolling through screenshots of my account on my phone. The missing money, Ethan's shining new laptop, my dad's steady voice, the loan application. By morning, the fear inside me had hardened into something else: focus. Scott that day, I met my friend Megan at a cafe near my office. She took one look at me and said, "Okay, what happened?" I told her everything in a low voice, like confessing a crime. Her eyes widened more with each detail. "Claire," she said, "that's not just messed up, that's illegal." "I know," I whispered. "They're just so sure I won't do anything." She held my gaze. "Are they right?" Moment, the old silence yawned open like a familiar pit. "No," I said, "not anymore." I drove to my grandfather's house on the edge of the city. His place was small and quiet, with tall trees leaning over the roof and a porch that creaked when you stepped on it. He opened the door before I even finished knocking, studying my face like he was reading headlines. "What's gone wrong?" he asked. We sat in his living room, the air smelling like books and pine cleaner. I spread the bank statements and screenshots out on his coffee table. I told him about the missing savings, my dad's explanation, the hidden loan paperwork. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening, his brows knitting together. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "I knew they leaned too hard on you," he said. "But this?" He shook his head. "This is using you, Claire. They're counting on you staying quiet like you always have." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I don't want to blow up the family." He looked directly at me. "They already did that when they decided your future was negotiable." We spent the next hour going through the statements. He made notes, circled dates, grouped transactions. His hands were slower now, but his mind was sharp as ever. "Document everything," he said. "Every transfer, every unexplained withdrawal. Keep copies somewhere they can't reach." "I started already," I told him, showing him the folder in my bag. He gave a small, proud nod. "Good. You're not overreacting. A family that loves you does not treat you like a bank account." The words lodged in my chest. I had tried so hard not to be a burden that I'd never considered I could become a resource, something to be drained. A few days later, my mom called. "Grandpa's visiting this weekend," she said brightly. "We're doing a family dinner. It'll be nice. Come early if you can." "I'll be there," I said. He poded anything like we said. They remember if you been. I didn't come early. I arrived exactly on time, the folder tucked neatly in my bag, my heartbeat steady. The moment I stepped into the house, I felt it, off-kilter energy. Mom fussed with napkins that were already straight. Ethan sat in the corner, scrolling on his phone like he wanted to disappear. My dad stood by the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. At the table, Kane resting by his chair, eyes following every movement in the room. Dinner started with small talk, the weather, work, a neighbor's new car. The smell of roasted chicken filled the room, mixing with the citrus cleaner my mom always used. Everyone sounded like they were reading from a script labeled normal. Then my dad cut into his food, glanced at me and said, almost casually, "We ended up using your savings where they'd do more good." The words hit like a slap. The room went still. I set my fork down carefully. "More good for who?" I asked. "Who's more deserving than the person who earned it?" Rectangular. Didn't even look ashamed. "Your brother," he said. "He needed support. You didn't. You're already on your feet. It's not complicated." Across the table, my grandfather's jaw clenched. He pushed his chair back. The scrape of wood against tile sliced through the quiet. "Say that again," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was dangerous. "Say exactly what you did." My dad stiffened. "Dad, this is between us. We made decisions as parents. You don't need to—" "Oh, I need to," my grandfather cut in. "I need to understand why you think stealing from your daughter is parenting." My dad's face darkened. "We didn't steal. We redirected. For Ethan's education. For his future." Reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. My hand stayed steady this time. "I brought proof," I said. I laid the papers out on the table. Bank statements, withdrawal logs, the dates lined up next to purchases and payments. On top, I placed the loan application with my name printed across it. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Where did you get these?" "In your kitchen drawer," I said softly. "The one you thought I wouldn't open." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes scanning the papers. "Wait," he said slowly. "All of that came from her account?" "Ethan, don't start acting ungrateful," my dad snapped. "We did this for you. You needed—" "I didn't ask you to drain her savings," Ethan shot back, his voice cracking. I didn't ask you to put a loan in her name. You deserved the help, my dad insisted. Claire doesn't need fancy things or extra chances. She's fine. My grandfather slammed his palm against the table. The plates rattled. Her being capable does not make her your personal funding source, he said, each word sharp. That's not love. That's exploitation. My dad turned on him. You have no idea what it's like raising kids now. I raised one of the adults at this table, my grandfather said, and I know the difference between sacrifice and abuse. He looked at me. Claire, tell them what you want. It hit me then. No one in this house had ever really asked me that. Not like this. Not and meant it. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I want every dollar you took returned, I said. All of it. And I want that loan paperwork destroyed. Today. By you, not just tossed somewhere I can't see. You're overreacting, my dad said. You have a job. You'll make the money back. She doesn't have to make back what you stole, my grandfather snapped. You do. And if you don't fix this, she has every right to report what you've done. Financial abuse. Identity fraud. Do you really want to see where that leads? The Denver went very, very still. My mom's eyes filled with tears. We were just trying to help Ethan, she whispered. We thought she'd understand. At her expense? My grandfather asked. At the cost of her security? Her trust? Ethan looked at me, guilt written all over his face. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know it was like this. It didn't undo anything, but it mattered that someone finally said it. My dad's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked afraid. Fine, he muttered. We'll pay it back. All of it, my grandfather said. And the loan? My dad swallowed. I'll cancel it. I'll shred the paperwork tonight. My grandfather gave a short nod. Good. That's the bare minimum. I gathered the papers back into the folder. I'm going home, I said. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay and not ruin the evening. For the first time, walking out of that house didn't feel like abandoning my family. It felt like choosing myself. In the weeks that followed, the repayments came in strained, quiet transfers. No apologies, no explanations, just numbers appearing in my account in chunks, pieces of something they never should have taken. My grandfather called often. Sometimes he showed up at my apartment with groceries or a toolbox, fixing things that didn't really need fixing. He didn't give long speeches. He just made sure I knew I wasn't standing in the fallout alone. Ethan kept his distance at first. Then, one afternoon, he knocked on my door with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He said simply, I don't want to be the reason you keep getting hurt. I believed him. Not completely, not yet, but enough to let the door open a little wider. Life in my little apartment shifted. The days in my little apartment shifted. I organized my documents, made a new budget, and started planning for things I wanted, not just things I could scrape by with. The fear I'd carried for years, the fear of being too much or ungrateful, started to loosen its grip. Things with my parents are different now. We still talk. I still visit sometimes, but there are lines that weren't there before, boundaries that say, this is mine, you don't get to touch it. A boundary isn't a wall, it's a reminder of where you end and someone else begins. For the first time, my family can see where I end. I'm building a future on my own terms now, one they don't get to rewrite or borrow from. And if you've ever had to stand up to the people who were supposed to protect you, I want you to hear this. You're not selfish for wanting respect. You're not dramatic for wanting your work, your money, your safety to be yours. You're not alone.